Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, we have pulled quite the source shortcut for you today. We're doing a deep dive into skin conditions.
hmm
And we're not just talking the usual suspects. We've synthesized info on over 30 specific disorders and, maybe more importantly, how skin health changes, across your entire life.
Yeah, it's a massive topic, really essential.
Yeah.
Your skin, well, it's not just a covering, is it? It's this huge, complex organ.
Right.
And its status often reflects what's happening deeper inside. So our goal here really is to give you a kind of structured understanding from those chronic annoyances to the really severe conditions so you can spot the crucial differences and know when professional help is, well, absolutely necessary.
Absolutely. The main goal is knowledge, like you said, not self-diagnosis. We're giving you the context. So before we jump into all the different types, let's start big picture. Why does skin matter so much?
Well, think of it as your body's first line of defense, its most vital barrier. A skin condition, broadly, is any medical disorder affecting the skin, hair, nails, or even sweat glands.
Yeah. Okay.
And its importance is just monumental. It regulates temperature, prevents dehydration, maintains moisture, and it's that constant physical shield against, well, everything outside.
Okay, so let's unpack the complexity then. When this defense system goes wrong, it's rarely just one simple thing, is it?
No, definitely not.
What I found fascinating is how the research kind of boils it down to 5 main ways our skin gets into trouble.
That's a good way to put it. We can generally categorize them into, say, external invaders and internal chaos.
Okay, let's start with the invaders then, the infectious agents.
Right. These are the bugs, basically, that breach the barrier. So you've got bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus causing impetigo,
Uh-huh.
viruses like herpes simplex, that's cold sores, fungi, I think athlete's foot, and even parasites like the tiny mites that cause scabies.
Ugh, okay, so those are things coming from the outside. Then you've got inherent weaknesses, right? The genetic factors.
Exactly. These are the inherited traits that kind of predispose you to certain issues.
Yeah.
Psoriasis is a classic example there. But eczema, or atopic dermatitis, is maybe even more illustrative. And a really deep insight here is that eczema often links back to specific genetic mutations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like in the filaggrin gene. This literally weakens the skin's structure, that barrier function we talked about. It makes it easier for irritants to get in and moisture to get out. It's a fundamental flaw, really.
Wow, okay. That makes a lot of sense, a structural weakness. So if that's the genetic blueprint, how does the immune system fit in? You mentioned internal chaos, autoimmune responses.
Yes, that's the internal chaos part. This is where the body's defense system gets confused and, well, attacks itself. It misinterprets healthy skin cells as threats.
So that's how you end up with things like a lupus rash.
Precisely. That rash is a symptom of the wider autoimmune disease, lupus, or vitiligo, another example, where the immune system actually destroys the pigment-producing cells.
Okay. And finishing off the 5 causes, we have the sort of everyday assaults, allergens, irritants, and lifestyle.
That's right. Allergens and irritants often lead to contact dermatitis. Think pollen, fragrances, nickel and jewelry, harsh cleaning chemicals.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
And then lifestyle is all that cumulative damage. UV radiation from the sun, chronic stress, lack of sleep, even poor hygiene. All these things can weaken the skin's integrity over time.
Okay, given all that complexity, I see the term dermatitis used almost everywhere. Can you maybe clarify the difference between that general term for inflammation and something specific and chronic like eczema?
That's a really great question because the terminology can be confusing. Dermatitis simply means inflammation of the skin. It's very broad.
Right.
But eczema, specifically atopic dermatitis, is defined as a chronic, non-contagious inflammatory condition. It usually involves cycles of flare-ups and remission.
So it's not just a one-off reaction.
Exactly. It's not just temporary irritation. It's more of a long-term battle, often rooted in that weakened barrier we discussed. And the scale, it's hard to grasp. Around 31.6 million people just in the U.S. are dealing with some form of eczema.
Wow, that's huge. Okay, let's dive into some of those really common chronic conditions people deal with. Things like acne, eczema, rosacea. They seem quite different, but is there a common thread linking them?
Well, yeah, the common thread is often inflammation. And it's usually driven by a mix of genetics, hormones, and those environmental triggers we talked about.
Acne, that has to be the most common globally, right? The sources mention it hit something like 633 million people worldwide back in 2015.
Staggering numbers.
We know the basic causes: excess oil, clogged follicles, bacteria like C. acnes. But what really struck me were some of the specific triggers mentioned in our sources.
Yes, the research is definitely moving beyond just blaming hormones, though they're still key. It highlights specific dietary triggers that seem to worsen symptoms for some people.
Like what?
We're talking high glycemic index foods, stuff like white bread, potato chips, sugary drinks, and maybe surprisingly, certain dairy products. Skim milk was specifically called out as a potential culprit in some studies.
Huh. That's actually really interesting and something people can potentially act on. Okay, moving to rosacea. This often gets mistaken for adult acne, doesn't it?
It does, quite often. Rosacea affects maybe around 5.5% of adults globally. It primarily shows up as redness, visible blood vessels, bumps, usually on the central face. Sometimes they can affect the eyes too.
And the cause is there. Still complex.
Oh, definitely. It seems to involve immune system dysfunction, problems with how nerves and blood vessels communicate in the skin, and maybe even a link to tiny microscopic mites, Demodex folliculorum, that live on our skin normally but might proliferate in rosacea.
So connecting this back, you might have the genetic tendency for rosacea or eczema, but it often takes an external trigger, maybe stress, heat, certain foods, or sun exposure to actually cause a flare-up.
Exactly. That interplay between our internal programming and external stresses is absolutely constant with these chronic conditions.
It's clear genetics and internal factors are huge. But if we shift focus purely to external forces, the sun has got to be the biggest player in how our skin changes over time, especially with aging.
Without a doubt, the sun is responsible for so much cumulative damage, and you see that most clearly in pigmentation issues,
Right, which covers a lot, from simple freckles and age spots.
to more complex conditions like melasma, yeah.
And that key stat about age spots really hammered it home for me. Solar lentigines affect something like 90% of people over 70.
It's almost unavoidable with age and sun exposure. It shows just how much that UV damage adds up over decades.
And melasma. That's different, right? More patchy.
Yes, melasma presents as brown or grayish-brown patches, usually on the face. It's very strongly linked to hormonal shifts. That's why it's common during pregnancy or with oral contraceptives.
Okay.
But crucially, sun exposure is almost always the necessary trigger, or at least a major exacerbating factor. In high-risk groups, the prevalence can be really high, up to 50%.
Now, not all dark spots are from the sun directly. The research also highlighted post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, PIH.
Right. PIH is discoloration that happens after some kind of skin injury or inflammation,
Yeah.
like after a bad burn or even severe acne clears up.
Mm-hmm.
And our sources noted something important. PIH accounts for about 20% of dermatology diagnoses in African Americans. It really underscores how inflammation itself can lead to lasting pigmentation changes, and this can be more pronounced in darker skin types.
Okay, so all this cumulative damage, especially from the sun, it leads us straight to wrinkles, doesn't it? Or rhytids, as the sources called them.
Yep, rhytids. Pretty much universal in the elderly population. They're caused by that unavoidable breakdown of collagen and elastin as we age.
But made much worse by...
Made much, much worse by UV damage that's photoaging and also by repetitive facial expressions over many, many years.
And if we're talking wrinkles, we should touch on treatments. The sources mention a whole range.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Options range from readily available topicals, like prescription retinoids, which are very effective, and good heavy moisturizers to help support the skin,
Right.
all the way up to cosmetic procedures like injectables and even surgery.
Yeah.
For significant sagging, a rhytidectomy or facelift physically tightens the underlying tissues.
And of course, the most serious link between the environment, particularly the sun, and skin health has to be skin cancer.
Yes, skin cancer encompassing basal cell carcinoma, BCC, squamous cell carcinoma, SCC, and melanoma is tragically the most common cancer in the U.S.
And the risk factors, mostly sun-related.
Strongly genetic and environmental. Fair skin, history of frequent sunburns, especially in childhood, red or blonde hair, those increase risk. And, really importantly, the use of tanning beds. They drastically increase risk because of the intense UV radiation causing DNA damage.
Okay, that's a sobering connection. Now, shifting gears slightly, looking at this through the lens of the lifespan seems really critical.
Oh, absolutely. Understanding skin disorders by life stage is crucial because the main causes and the types of conditions we see change dramatically. Think hormones in teens versus, say, a weakening immune response in older age.
Right. Like with babies, their skin barrier isn't fully developed yet.
Exactly. So they mostly suffer from issues related to moisture, friction, and maybe lingering maternal hormones.
Uh-huh.
That's why cradle cap, diaper rash, and even baby acne are so
The
common.
teenagers hit, and it's all about hormones, right?
Pretty much. That surge in androgens ramps up sebum production.
Mm.
Result: oily skin and, very often, acne.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, this is also when we commonly see things like dandruff start and keratosis pilaris, the little rough bumps, often on the upper arms. Sources suggest that affects maybe 50 to 80% of teens.
Wow, that high. Okay. And for women, the hormonal influence doesn't stop after teenage years, does it?
Not at all. It's really a lifelong factor. Fluctuations during monthly cycles, pregnancy, then menopause, all these increase susceptibility to various skin issues.
Like what specifically?
Well, hormonal acne can persist or reappear. Melasma, as we discussed, is strongly linked to pregnancy hormones. And the sources cited a compelling statistic. Around 90% of pregnant women experience some kind of skin change. That could be stretch marks, which are technically called striae gravidarum, or melasma.
90%. Wow.
And another point for women. They generally show higher rates of autoimmune-related skin conditions, things like vitiligo and those lupus-related rashes we mentioned earlier.
Interesting. And what about men? Are there specific patterns there?
Yes, higher testosterone levels generally mean thicker and oilier skin compared to women. But behaviorally, men often have greater lifetime sun exposure, maybe through occupation or recreation.
Which translates to?
More sun damage overall, unfortunately, and a higher incidence of non-melanoma skin cancers like BCC and SCC. They also tend to have a higher incidence of certain infectious things, like athlete's foot, often linked to moist environments from sports or physical work.
Okay. So after this incredible overview, causes, life cycles, common conditions, what does this all mean for us, for our personal routine and health monitoring? Let's focus on key symptoms and, importantly, prevention.
Yeah, that's key. And the sheer variety of symptoms is exactly why self-diagnosis is basically impossible, or at least very risky.
Because symptoms can look so similar.
Exactly. They vary wildly. You might see abnormal pigmentation, darker patches like melasma, or lighter patches like vitiligo.
Or just persistent itchiness.
Right, like you get with eczema, or hives, or scabies. Or sometimes there's that early warning sensation, burning or stinging, which often comes before, say, a cold sore appears.
And then the changes in texture, scaly or rough skin.
Yep. Think of the silvery scales in psoriasis, or those crusty, almost sandpaper-like patches of actinic keratosis, which is a really common precancerous lesion caused by sun damage.
Okay. Before we get to prevention, though, we probably need to briefly touch on the severity scale. Some conditions are true emergencies.
Absolutely. Critical point.
Yep.
The most severe conditions demand urgent medical care because they can be life-threatening. We're talking about things like Stevens-Johnson syndrome or toxic epidermal necrolysis, which are severe drug reactions affecting the skin.
Right.
Advanced melanoma, obviously. And necrotizing fasciitis, the so-called flesh-eating bacteria. These really underscore that skin changes can signal dire systemic problems.
And that reality brings us right back to the crucial warning from the sources. You simply cannot reliably self-diagnose a skin condition.
You really can't.
Because the symptoms overlap so much. Is that patch just dry skin, or is it early eczema? Is that mole changing, or is it fine?
Exactly. Trying to guess risks misinterpretation and potentially fatal delays in getting care for serious issues like melanoma.
So when does someone absolutely need to see a dermatologist? What are the non-negotiable signs?
Okay, the clear indicators are any mole that's changing, look for the ABCDEs. Asymmetry, irregular border, uneven color, diameter larger than a pencil eraser, or evolving, changing over time.
Okay, ABCDEs. Got it.
Also, persistent or severe acne, especially the deep, painful, cystic or nodular kind that can scar. Any wound or sore that just won't heal, or lesions that bleed easily or keep growing.
Makes sense.
And finally, any unexplained chronic rash that doesn't clear up on its own within, say, a week or two. Don't just wait it out indefinitely.
Right. Okay, so that's when to call the expert. Now, for prevention and just good long-term care, the sources boiled it down to a pretty structured routine. 3 main steps.
Yeah, pretty straightforward but effective. First is proper hygiene. Sounds basic, but frequent hand washing, cleaning any cuts or scrapes immediately, bathing after heavy sweating or activity, it reduces infection risk.
Okay. Step 2.
Environmental protection. And this mainly means sun protection. Applying a broad-spectrum sunscreen, SPF 30 or higher, every single day, rain or shine, winter or summer.
Every day. Wow.
Every day. And also actively seeking shade during peak sun hours. Usually that's between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Wearing protective clothing, hats, sunglasses. It all adds up.
Makes sense. And the third step, healthy habits.
Exactly. This is the long game. Using gentle, mild cleansers, nothing too harsh or stripping, moisturizing consistently to help maintain that crucial skin barrier.
Yeah.
Managing chronic stress as best you can, since stress hormones can trigger flare-ups of many conditions. And, of course, maintaining a balanced, nutrient-rich diet to support overall health, which reflects in your skin. So I think the ultimate takeaway here is that skin conditions really exist on this wide spectrum, from the common and chronic, like eczema or acne, where informed self-management and dermatologist guidance are key,
Right.
all the way to the incredibly rare and acute conditions where immediate medical action is vital. But the core message is your skin health is never isolated. It's truly a direct window into your internal systemic health.
That's a great summary. Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's clear that whether you're managing chronic inflammation or just trying to defend against daily UV damage, really understanding these risks and causes empowers you, the listener, to be a much more proactive partner in your own healthcare. So we'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. We know the skin produces vitamin D when exposed to sunlight, and vitamin D is critical for things like bone health. But we also know very clearly that UV radiation causes significant cellular damage and skin cancer. So how should that fundamental conflict, the internal need versus the external risk, really change how you think about your daily sun exposure and the level of protection you give your skin every day? Something to consider.